Santa baby, slip a sable under the tree.
Nuts to that. Hello everyone and Merry Christmas. Welcome to Totally Tanked, the podcast about Tanked. It is the 18th of December 2021. My name is John and I'm joined in the pod by Rob.
Hello, I'm Rob and this is the Christmas special for Totally Tanked, our second episode for December. And it's a special one, isn't it, John?
Well, we've never done 2 episodes in a month, and also no one would actually think that a Tank podcast would do a Christmas special. But here we are, defying expectations.
That's right. Yeah. Beer in hand, we are going to bring you a special episode with 2 beers today. 2
beer reviews in the one podcast.
From countries that don't have tanks, so why not?
Yes. I was just saying off mic that Rob's beer selections are the ghost division of this operation. They just pop up in unexpected places.
So for those people who'd like to hear us talk about a particular tank, that's not going to happen this episode. We're going to talk about a number of things that have caught our eye in the year and tanks and history and all sorts of other things. So it's just going to be a bit of a ramble through tankerdom.
It is. Now, I think one thing I want to start with is that Spotify, and big shout out to Spotify. You've been a huge driver of our listener growth this year, and thank you for that, because most people who listen to podcasts, say, a year ago, look at Spotify's podcast interface and go, why would I ever want to listen to a podcast on Spotify? But it turns out that people who use Spotify do like to listen to podcasts, and they like to use Spotify. So there's a bit of dissonance in the podcasting community about Spotify, but here we are, and you're listening to us, and that's great. And
thank you, Spotify listeners.
Yeah. And when Spotify sent us our list of highlights for the year, one of the things it noted was that the band that our listeners most listen to is Sabaton.
Sabaton.
Which I didn't need Spotify to tell me. Although when I posted it to our Twitter account, we did have a few of our listeners saying, yeah, my 14-year-old child listens to this Sabaton thing. Are they listening on your Spotify account? Anyway, so that's the Sabaton thing. And Sabaton has a song out called The Christmas Truce.
Lovely song.
Yes.
Lots of instrumentals, operatics.
It's a real bro hymn. You could really wave your mobile phone in the air wishing you still had a Zippo lighter. So, you know, that's good. And it does capture a lot of the spirit of, everyone coming together and stopping killing each other. But
for those who don't know, the Christmas Truce was
the
1914 Battle of the Trenches in northern France during the First World War, where everybody stopped for Christmas and they had a bit of a truce and a bit of a soccer game, and Blackadder totally not offside.
And the reality that gets glossed over is in some ways more inspiring, and in some ways it's actually a lot darker, because what happened was a whole bunch of journalists descended on the front lines on Christmas Day looking to file stories about what Christmas was like in the front lines. And they noticed that the soldiers weren't in fact fighting each other and were kicking a ball around, and bands were playing, Christmas carols were being sung. And they were like, oh my God, this is some sort of Christmas miracle that this scene of carnage has turned into one of brotherhood between all men. And while in some parts that did happen, and the biggest story was that there had been a huge movement of non-cooperation, particularly as the first volunteer armies of 1914, as opposed to the regulars who'd ground each other into oblivion in August 1914, got rushed into the front lines, and they all dug their trenches and looked at each other. And a lot of them, millions of them, decided that the smart thing to do was not to kill the guys 100 metres away, and instead everyone agree not to shoot at each other, and that way everyone might get to go home. And a lot of what was observed as this Christmas Truce miracle was actually what had been the state of play for some weeks and months beforehand. But when the High Command got their newspapers on the day after Christmas and read about how their soldiers weren't killing each other...
In the English-speaking world, it's called it Boxing Day. Sorry, the non-American English-speaking world, I guess.
But anyway, so Boxing Day 1914 rolls around, and the High Command in their chateaus drinking tea.
And the day that the staff is let off as well, so that is a point. Yeah. So they've had to do all this stuff themselves and say, the bloody oiks.
Yeah. They've had to collect their copy of the Times from the front step themselves. and they've discovered the troops aren't killing each other. And there was significant crackdown and a lot of reforms to things like rotating the units more rapidly so that they couldn't form friendships with the troops on the other side, which was actually really good for the troops because instead of getting stuck in the trenches till their feet rotted off, they were getting rotated in and out more often. So I guess that's a positive of the Christmas miracle. But it was, and then bringing in a lot of colonial troops like Australians later who wanted to impress the mother country and would be a lot more aggressive towards the poor buggers on the other side. So it's a more complicated
we don't
story.
sing carols very well either. I think that was probably a big part of it. Whereas the Germans and the Welsh, well, you know they're going to sing something, and the French as well. But yeah, 1915, Christmas 1915.
14.
The
next year.
Next year, in Christmas 1915, the generals made sure on both sides that there was going to be none of this but malarkey of Christmas truces, and had the barrages going, the artillery barrages going from about 3 days beforehand, and just made sure that nobody was having a good time then. And it was actually a direct point that they made, is saying, we are not letting this happen again.
Yeah.
We're going to have war no matter what. There's like a case of, what if they had a war and nobody turned up? Well, they made sure everybody turned up this time.
Everyone turned up, yeah. Attendance is compulsory. But the point that I just want to stress is that if not for the journalists writing about the Christmas miracle, which created the public perception of the Christmas miracle that lingers on to this day and is inspired the Sabaton song, the troops might well have been able to go for a great longer period not shooting each other before the high command caught on to what they were up to. So it's kind of one of those, sliding doors moments that you can't really tell what would have happened if it had gone the other way. But it wasn't entirely great that the public got this sense of a Christmas miracle at the expense of the soldiers on the front line. On that happy note, I'm just going to
tanks then, no. There was still another couple of years before the tanks were rolling out.
About 2 years before the tanks started really ruining things for Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah, just like this podcast. So just going through the mailbox for the year, which is totestank at gmail.com.
We are totes tanked.
Yeah. So 19th of April, Etienne sent through the alternative versions of our theme music.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with both versions that was sent through.
And of course, we're impressed by the original version by Luke McGrath, which we are eternally thankful for.
Yeah.
So that was nice. Just moving through, what else have we had? Lots of people saying make money from your podcast.
Yeah, look, if we can, if somebody wants to send us a bunch of money so we can go up and see the Australian Arms and Armour and Artillery Museum in Cairns when the borders between states are opened again effectively and we're not going to catch any horrible diseases, then yeah, fine, go for it.
Look, I think, let's talk about that now. We have had a few people recently said, how do we give you guys money? And we're sort of like, well, we don't have a monetizable product because we give away the thing that we do for free, and we could start a Patreon, but then how are we going to reward the patrons? At the same time, so it's something we're thinking about. Maybe we'll put some T-shirts up for sale next year, but at the moment, we're trying to build audience, and we're just enjoying doing it.
Damn straight.
So
I get to come hang out with my mate John, and we drink beer and we talk tanks. I mean, what could be better than that on a Saturday afternoon, eh?
But watch this space. We would like to at least be able to put enough money in the kitty to travel to some tank museums and do a little more than we're currently doing, but we're just working
Road trip to Puckapunyal.
Road trip to Puckapunyal, yeah. I mean, and we literally have one of the biggest collections of museum armour in the world, about 5 kilometres from where we're sitting right now. So
I'm sure it's that far. It's probably 2.
Yeah, anyway, so that's the Trelaw Annex of the Australian War Memorial, which we would like to get into. So, yeah. Okay, in terms of emails, David from On the Bench, which is a little podcast that does stuff about model tanks.
Right.
Yes, he wanted to know if we make model tanks. And then I said, I 3D printed some little tanks. And he said, no, if you don't buy a proper kit, you're not allowed. You're not allowed to be in our podcast.
I plagiarised, made resin cast model tanks.
Yeah, I don't think that he likes that either.
No, but and so they're not very detailed. They're not very. And they were for Warhammer 40k.
So David from On the Bench was very polite.
Many years ago, many years ago, mate. Misspent youth.
When he discovered that we don't, in fact, do model tanks, he lost interest in our talent, which was, it was okay. That's fine. Let's see, what else have we got here? Andrew McNeil emailed us to say, hi guys, keep up good chats. Cheers. So thank you,
Thank you, Andrew.
That is the sort of feedback we like.
We do like having good chats.
Yes. Okay, so Mike got in touch to say, yours is the first podcast I listened to, the first of your podcasts as well. I'm afraid I am a rivet counter in some ways, although if I build a model kit, I often leave parts off. Don't tell the On the Bench team. Okay.
This is Mike who drinks his whiskey and smokes his cigar while listening to the podcast.
No, this is a different one.
Different one?
Yes, yep. Anyway, he's got a few things to say about the Hetzer.
Hetz is going to Hetz.
So he's saying the Pack 40 is a 75 L46 anti-tank gun, and he thinks we were talking of the 7.5 centimeter KWK 40.
The quickfire 40, yeah.
Maybe. Yes, could well be. So we apologise for that mistake.
Good spotting and rivet counters.
Yes. Hetzers were to be issued to the Panzerjäger battalions of infantry and Volksgrenadier divisions in companies or batteries of 14 vehicles, HQ of 2, 3 platoons of 4 Hetzers each. That was changed to 10 vehicles, which was 1 Hetzer and 3 platoons of 3 Hetzers each. Whew.
There you go.
Good to know. We missed the tank destroyer battalions, which were formed of 14 Hetzer companies and an HQ of 3 Hetzer. If I remember correctly, there were 5 of these formed. Okay, that's good. Hetzer's internal machine gun mount included a periscope for aiming the gun, although he presumes the loader used that periscope for observation. The Hetzer had twin periscopes. Those were not direct vision slits in the armour. Vision out of the vehicle was poor. The Hetzer did have a radio set. The command vehicles had a second long-range set. Anyway, thank you for that, Mike. And he also sent 3 pictures of his model Hetzers.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. We would note that some of the things he mentioned were things that we could have talked about, but we do try and keep it a little snappy. And in a 1 hour-ish podcast, there are levels of detail that we're not rivet counters.
We're 80% is good enough.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
Well, a lot of the time. I know I am.
Mm-hmm.
There are things we like to dig into, but other things we'd say, yeah, look, do I really need to know which Volksgrenadier companies had Hetzers attached in 1943? No. I'm not going to bother going into that. I like the big hands of the maps of sweeping movements across the plains.
Now, one of my favourite emails of the year was from Desmond, from Desmond Tactical, who sent us an email that just said, sign me up, please.
Good on you, Desmond.
And I looked at that and thought, that's odd. And I was like, aside from subscribing to the podcast, which I'm assuming you've done because you wouldn't be talking to us otherwise, is there anything else we can help with? And Desmond said, Roger that. I literally had no idea what a podcast was. Had some of my computer guys explain it. Thank you. Enjoy the shows very much. It's my backyard cigar time glass of Irish whiskey. Which,
that's the way to do it.
Yes. I liked that. That was one of my favourite emails of the year.
Sounds like a man who wants to sit back and relax and listen to our dulcet tones talk about tanks.
Yeah, we did have some more commentary from Desmond saying socialists slaughter everyone everywhere equally. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take that as a comment.
Yeah.
And then he was letting us know that...
make sure that I have to pay for this slaughter. I mean, that's kind of the point, isn't it?
Yeah. And he then sent through some videos of in Las Vegas, because there are various tanks you can rent for the weekend. Because in Las Vegas, everything you can be rented for the weekend.
Go out and shoot some guns, yeah?
Yeah, look, so if you all want to really buy a lot of t-shirts, who knows, we'll get to Las Vegas, I guess.
I'm not sure I need to go to Las Vegas.
Aren't you? Lacking ambition. Okay, and I think that's what's been emailed to totestank at gmail.com through the year. And I think on that note, it's time to go for our first beer. What do you reckon, Ron?
I think it is.
Okay.
This ain't no grog or ale. 1 pint down, you'll be swinging in the gale. 5 pints, buddy, you'll be shaking in your shoes.
So now it's time for
beer review
number 1. And what have we got here, Rob?
Now, strine, which is the type of English that Australians speak, it's called strine. I would say this is called Tecate. It's a Mexican beer, but other people around the world might pronounce that name differently. What do you think?
Tecate?
Tecate? Yeah.
It could even be a... No, it's definitely a hard C, isn't it?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
It's not the Spanish th.
Although, cerveza... I do a lot of ancient history for my YouTube channel, Every Naval Battle in History, and getting the C's right on Roman names drives me nuts, because some of them are definitely soft C's and some of them are hard C's.
Bloody damn Kelly Brimbors.
How do you tell? Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, so Tecate, we're going to call it. Cerveza...
Mexicana.
Yeah. Imported beer in the most unsatisfying beer can size known to humanity.
355.
Yeah, do not like.
Why not?
Well, 375 is the best beer size because it's a schooner glass.
Yep.
Or fits well into a pint if you're getting a little heady. Anyway, and this is unsatisfactory and smaller, but they charge you the same price because they're sneaky. And I mean, at least it's not as bad as the 325 milliliter.
I've seen 325s.
Or 330s, you get...
330s,
yeah,
yes.
330s. Anyway, around then.
We'll have another one of those. We'll have one of those later.
Okay, cool. So, but yeah, it's...
Hecho on Mexico since 1944. So I'm assuming brewed in Mexico since 1944, so good on them. It's been around for a while. Cerveza. Look, it's got a stylized eagle on the can. I'm going to guess I'm going to say a golden eagle, but I have absolutely no idea really. But John, tell us about the beer.
It's a tasty lager.
Yeah, it is. An authentic, full-flavoured lager. Tecate is the bold taste of Mexico. For over 70 years, we brewed our beer for those born with an appreciation of crisp flavour, quality ingredients, and originality. We brew it for those who are born bold. Are we born bold?
Well, I don't know about that, but I will say that anyone who's marketing their beer as crisp and quality ingredients means it's as flavourless as possible. And I would say, I wouldn't say this is flavourless. No. It's got a few little malty notes that come on late. But it's a real hot weather lager, so it's not too fizzy, it's not too aggressive. But if you get it served ice cold on a really hot, humid day...
And it is a very hot, humid day here in Canberra.
Yeah.
Unlike last bloody weekend when it was bloody freezing.
Yeah, well, climate change is terrible and we need to take action immediately, Rob.
Yep, we're doing that, all right? You and I are making those things happen.
We are literally doing the most we possibly can. But, there's a lot of other people who aren't, and they need to take a long, hard look at themselves.
Damn straight.
Anyway, I've never had this beer before, and you know what? I like it. If someone gave me a case of this for Christmas, I would give them a big hug.
Yeah, well, they go on sale. 6-packs are on sale for $11, so it's probably $10
so
off.
cheap.
Exactly. That's
wow.
one of the reasons. And the other thing is, I thought to myself, well, I was in the bottle shop yesterday, and they were selling these, getting rid of their 6-packs for $11 and $12. And I thought, right, I'm going to buy a couple of those for countries that don't have tanks, that don't build tanks.
Tell us about the Mexican tank situation, Rob.
The Mexicans don't have tanks. The Mexican army, which is quite large, Mexico being one of the largest populations in the world, I think it's like 6 or something like that, they've gotten rid of their tanks, and because they've said, right, the countries to the south, so small and tiny, they're absolutely no threat. The country to the north, while a big belligerent arms dealer, there's absolutely no point trying to keep up with those mad buggers. So they said, right, we're going to get rid of our tanks because tanks are expensive and hard to maintain. So they're just going to go armoured personnel carriers, armoured cars and so forth, and that's what they're going to use to carry out their internal army activities, because it is a very the army is very much deployed within Mexico. Is not deployed overseas. Is not deployed in other countries. I don't know what their relationship with is with Belize and is it? I can't remember who else is down south in Honduras. But the point being is that they have no tanks. However, the people they are deploying their military against, the narco drug state peoples, are building tanks. They're building their narco tanks, the cartels. And those guys saw Mad Max and said, hey, that's what we can do. And so they've been getting their semi-trailers, semi-trucks, and putting armour on them, dump trucks and everything else. And some of them look pretty schmick. Some of them look pretty orky.
One
And
of the things I love most about northern Mexico and its illegal scene is that their main source of steel is the fence the Americans keep insisting on building. Certainly in the Clinton era when they were building a fence before the Donald Trump let's build a wall. So Bill Clinton's wall that he was less loud about. The trick was you took a flatbed truck with Honduran migrants up to the wall, and you got them to dismantle the wall and load it onto the flatbed truck, and then they were allowed to go through the hole that they'd created, and the flatbed truck brought the steel back to Mexico, where, you know, steel is a valuable commodity in any country, but if these nice Nortes keep putting the steel on your border, why not keep going and getting it?
so anyway, while Mexico doesn't have any tanks, I thought I'm going to get a Mexican beer. We can talk about what tanks they don't have and how the narcos have. As I said, they've watched Mad Max and they've built up their semi-trailers with armour and
hopefully using wall steel, because that would be awesome to really build up your armour with.
They got rams on the front, and they got cupolas in the top, and portholes for guys to shoot out of, and they've even built themselves a little factory to roll out these narco tanks. But
one thing I love about the narco scene in Mexico is just a key fact to understand is how many gun shops do you think there are in Mexico?
2.
There's 1. It's 1 legal gun shop in all of Mexico, and all the rest of the weapons in this hyper-violent society have come across the border from their good friends to the north.
Oh, there you go.
So there you go.
Tecate. As Strines would say, look, it's a very fine little beer.
And good on them for keeping going since 1944.
Yeah, so it's not the other Mexican beers like Corona that we all know and exported around the place. So it's a different one. There we go.
Made in Montezuma. Yeah, okay, cool. Okay.
Monterey from the.
I thought it was bottled in Monterey. Anyway, it's a very small print.
Moctezuma. I'm not sure if that's the same as Montezuma, but there's probably lots of different places with a similar spelling.
Look, you know, there's a lot of culture that we don't understand going on there. I was about to say,
it's a big country, and I don't know enough. I've been to Mexico City, I've been to Tijuana, and I've been to not even Cancun. What's the coast off of Cancun?
Baja or something?
No, the other side. No, the Cancun's on the Caribbean side.
Oh, okay.
And that's the island, but the actual land, the coast, Yucatan Peninsula there. So, but those were when I was very young and didn't know anything about what was going on there.
Okay, now let's talk about our reviews this year.
Yes.
We've had 17 ratings on the Apple, because the Apple Podcasts app was until about 2 years ago pretty much the only way anyone listened to any podcasts, and now it's a much more vibrant ecosystem, which is good. But it tends to be where the most important reviews happen still. So if you're using Apple Podcasts to listen to podcasts, do give us a rating. We're averaging 4.6 out of 5 stars, which is okay.
Why aren't we getting 7s? We should be getting 7s.
We should be getting 7s, but
Come on. 7s.
I feel ashamed of myself. So basically, we've had 14 5-star podcast ratings, which is good. We've had 2 4 stars, and I know that there's, particularly in the military, a line of thought that you can never give more than 4 out of 5 to anyone for anything. And this is why Uber drivers refuse to service military academies.
Because you know what happens if you give 5 out of 5?
They can't improve.
Well, not only that, is that then you have to do some paperwork to say, yes, there is a reason why they gave him a 5 out of 5, because, and here's my justifications as to why I'm giving it to them, because it has implications further on down the track of what, so you've got to do the paperwork that goes with it. So that's why you don't do it.
I'm just saying.
You don't do it because it's too much hassle.
Yeah, if it's on an app, just give them 5 stars, you cheap bastards. Okay, and we've had 1 1-star rating, which also came with a review, which we will get to. But let's do the good stuff. So LVNV USA says, love the discussion. Looking forward to all the armour out there still to discuss. Yes. Thank you.
We keep thinking, what are we going to discuss next? Because there is a lot out there. And I think, well, it's not like we're going anywhere, and it's not like we're going to change our format or anything like that. So there's lots of armour. We're going to keep on going, boys.
Now, we've got one that irritated me here. This is from Jammed Inbox. Great podcast. Enjoy it. One note, get real mics. The audio quality is well awful. Now, let me address this. we have had podcasts, particularly the Centurion, but a couple of others, where the sound has not been at the quality level we wanted. Partly this is because there's a small cat who jumps on the mixing desk. Partly
the first 10 podcasts, the first hour that we would do was trying to get the sound levels right after the cat had sat on the mixing board.
Now, also, there have been times, particularly in the pandemic, when we've done remote ones where, again, I've made my life more complicated than it needed to be, and that led to particularly the Centurion episode, some terrible sound. We're in an interesting space where this podcast now has so many listeners that we're competing against podcasts that are made by actual radio shows, radio studios.
Voice actors.
And we're not...
And I want to give a shout out to Dom and Billy from the Friendship Onion, because I've been listening to them lately and really enjoying them.
Okay. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that
20th anniversary of the Lord of the Rings cycle. Anyway.
Yeah, we are victims. We are victims of our own success to the point that we have listeners now who are expecting a higher quality of audio than the backyard podcast that we, at some level, are at heart. I would say that the microphones we are using, though, are MXL 770s that could be in any recording studio anywhere. The problem is me being an idiot, not the microphones. Okay, we had one from SSP12, awesome tank podcast, two guys who know their tank stuff and also beers, can't wait for their new tanks each episode, fun had by all, need to know more about that German chocolate though. That German chocolate!
The speed and cocaine chocolate, yeah.
So Perverton, I think it was good. No, that was the speed. Anyway, Germans had a tanker's chocolate.
Proton energy pills.
Yeah. Germans did, as I think most listeners would know. Well, maybe not. Anyway, there's a book called Blitzed, which is about the use of drugs, particularly by the German military in World War II. That's well worth a read if you're interested. But particularly at the start of the war, a lot of operations where the Germans got totally inside the OODA loop of the Allies.
Look at you bringing those words out.
Oh, yeah.
You've been listening to me.
Observe, orient, decide, act.
Can't remember these days, but yes.
Yeah. Anyway, because they were all hopped up on amphetamines and not sleeping, whereas the more leisurely British command, that was partly, when you're fighting World War One, you've got a long time to plan and bring things together, and you can keep gentlemanly hours, and suddenly when you're in a more mobile war like World War II, you can't sleep, and the amphetamines help for a while. Yeah, anyway, that was
the further you can get for your blitzkrieg, then the less work you have to do later on.
Yeah, obviously to a point when the soldiers start seeing things.
And look, there are nowadays. There are nice tables to say your soldiers are effective out to this period of time, and after that, they'll their effectiveness will drop by X amount, and then they'll drop by X amount after that. And so you need to have this much rest over this period of time. Otherwise, this is what's going to happen to the effectiveness of your troops.
Yeah, one of the things I was always really impressed
Can't
about...
remember the numbers, but they are out there.
Yeah, I was very impressed when I was reading a lot of unit diaries of the Australian forces in Palestine in World War One, was that the watering of the horses was just so obviously the most important thing that was happening, and in that environment, finding water for the horses. But and fatigue management is one of those things that's underrated by amateur observers of war. But you can even go back to some of the great Roman victories, where if you look closely, you can see particularly Caesar's victory over Pompey at Pharsalus. Managing the fatigue of his troops better than Pompey was why he won.
Now, having brought up the Australians in Palestine, John, I'm going to throw out here,
yes,
because you led into it. So for those who want to see a cavalry charge done well on big screen, The Light Horseman is an Australian movie about the culminating in the charge of the Light Horse Brigade on Beersheba.
Trust me, if you read the unit diaries, there's a lot of horse watering. But yeah, go on.
And the horse watering actually makes a big part of the movie, right? But that charge, the Australians charging over the open ground to the Turkish positions in Beersheba, is fantastic. So those who want to, even if you only watch the 20 minutes of that part of it and rubbish and piss off all the love story and so forth that they try and bring into it and whatever else, just watch that that light horse charge scene across the desert towards Beersheba. That was incredible. So I wanted to wedge this in here, these comments in here somewhere, and John's opened the door for me, so I'm taking that opportunity.
Diving through the door. All right, let's go to another good, nice review. This is from Dunker56. Calls us the ultimate niche podcast. Guilty as charged.
You know, I'm sure there are more niche podcasts than us.
Possibly, but, anyway.
I bet there's podcasts about the model tanks that don't even have a beer review.
Yeah,
and that's
more niche, yeah. Anyway, he says, I'm an old USMC M60A1 dyno tanker and look forward to each new edition of Totally Tanked. Even if you miss the good fortune to have walked track, greased hubs, gotten soaked at the wash rack, or breathed the heavenly aromas of diesel and cordite, give the show a listen and have a beer. Thank you, Dunker56.
That's a great review. I like the imagery he brings up and saying, I think to myself, yep, I saw all those things happening with other people doing it and never had to do it myself, but watched other people doing that sort of stuff and thought, yep, that really does.
You were an officer though, Rob.
I know. And I was around tanks. I didn't actually have anything to do with them. But, that does really encapsulate a lot of the environment. And, that was a really well put statement.
Now we get to the tricky one. We're going to have a bit to say about this. This is from an old M1 tanker. 1 star. As a former army tanker, I did enjoy your podcast.
Good on you. That's the main part of the podcast.
Should just ended it there. Yeah. Yep. Well, until you made some political comments about the vax.
But.
I know many people on both sides who have chosen not to get it. Both sides of what who've chosen not to get it? Anyway, moving on.
How many of them are dead out of the 800,000?
Yeah. And it's their choice. So to talk down to a particular group is ignorant. Not trusting a vax that's been out for less than a year is fine. Not that's not being anti-vax, but then I'm sure you're enjoying your vax passports. I actually am.
I know. John's just got his third. I'm jealous. I want to get my third. I'm going to, this week, my missus got her third about an hour ago, and I'm thinking, well, why didn't I got the same as, well, anyway, I'll be getting my third this week.
She's more important than you.
She is, but I'll be getting my third this week. Damn straight.
Okay. Anyway, he finishes up with, sounds very Nazi Germanish to me. So we do a little Godwin foul at the end there.
Well, we are making we make the trains run on time here in the ACT, don't we?
They do run on time.
There you go.
We've only had trains for a couple of years, but we had trains until the 1930s, and then the rail line got washed away in a flood, and then we didn't have them until like 2018. Yeah. But yeah, we've got them again. Yay! Yay!
Choo choo! Come on, everybody in Canberra loves a tram.
Not everyone.
Not everyone, but we're going to make them.
I do. Yeah. Anyway, I'm a little disappointed that because I think we've probably mentioned the vaccine for like 2 minutes out of the 600 minutes we've recorded this year.
I make sure in the last year and a half, I've made sure I've mentioned it as many times as I can, even if it was only 10 seconds worth.
Yeah, I'm not going to apologise for saying people should get vaccinated.
No, if you've got access to it, please go get vaccinated. If you don't have access to it, I'm very sorry that that's the case for you, and I hope that the environment that you're in will open those opportunities up for you as soon as possible.
Yeah. Anyway, vaccines are good, and you should get them. So that's the reviews we've had. So if that's hopefully inspired some of you to go give us another review on whatever platform you're listening to us on.
We want 7s. Yeah,
look, minimum 5 stars.
Because we won't make you do any paperwork if you do give us 5s.
Indeed. Okay, I think we need to...
Go to another beer.
Okay, we'll go to the next beer. Awesome.
This ain't no grogger ale. 1 pint down, you'll be swinging in the gale. 5 pints, Billy, you'll be shaking in your shoes.
Okay, folks, now it's time for... Beer review
number 2. Now, this one's San Juan Portuguese beer.
Yeah, right.
So, again, Portugal not being a country that builds tanks, so I thought, right, we're never going to have a Portuguese beer on, so I thought, I'll give it a go. Now, I'm looking at the label. And
I would say, one thing I like about Portugal's military history is, I mean, the exploration through the age of sail and conquering all of Brazil, very impressive stuff, unless you're a native Brazilian. And that's all really cool. But then at the end of their colonial era, when the Indians decided it was time to get the Portuguese out of Goa.
1961.
if you want to look, even just look it up on Wikipedia, it's got a pretty good description. The combined arms that India brought against them with aircraft carriers and medium bombers and pretty sure the Indians rolled some tanks in as well. It was a fantastic operation by the Indians. And in terms of signalling the end of the colonial era, where up until that point the Europeans had devastated...
Any sort of country that had tried to push them out.
Yeah, but yes, the Europeans had devastated with superior technology and better equipment, and the turnaround that this represented, and the I think it was the Salazar dictatorship in Portugal signalling to their troops in Goa that you must defend it to the bitter end, to the last man, and the troops looked at this unstoppable Indian tidal wave of mechanized warfare and said, "No." Why don't you come here and hold it?
Now, just to point out that the Portuguese did not have any tanks in Goa and Macau at that stage, because they did not defend, and there were no tank battles at that point. And they just said, no, we just you can have the land. We're going. So and look, it was another 13 years. Anyway,
this is the most magnificent smelling beer I've ever encountered.
Now it's. I do wonder, the San Juan, as listed on here, if that's the San Juan in the Caribbean, in one of the islands there in the Caribbean, because it's got palm trees and a lighthouse. I'm assuming it's a lighthouse, possibly it's a post box, I don't know.
Also a pregnancy warning, Rob. This could cause lifelong harm to your baby.
Yeah, I know, it's a good warning. But
I mean, we do both look like we're pregnant, but in fact, we are not.
No. Everybody else just has the symbol, don't drink if you're pregnant, but this one actually says don't drink because it will harm your baby. So I don't know where this has come from, but as I said, it's a Portuguese beer.
It is the smelliest lager I've ever encountered. It is just filling this entire room with this beautiful sulphury lager nose.
Authentic lager beer, and it's got, I'm assuming those are symbols of hops, the little bar, or those are the barley, the little pictures underneath.
Those would be hops, yeah.
Yeah.
But
it is.
I'm guessing Hallertau. But yeah, so that's little hops things, and so it is a lighthouse. Okay, yeah.
Is it a lighthouse? Yeah, probably.
It's either a penis or a lighthouse. I mean, the two are very hard to tell
as I said, it could be a letterbox, but
or Jeff Bezos's rocket.
There you go. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe. It is John's hated 330 mils. Yeah. And it's a not a twist top. It's a so we had to use the bottle openers for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, not having a twist top these days, who just doesn't have that? I don't understand.
It does make for a much simpler tool chain in the bottling plant. But yeah, in 2021, it's...
Get over it.
Yeah.
So yeah, San Juan in the golden age of sail in the 17th century or whatever else changed the hands a number of times between the French, the British, the Spanish and the Portuguese. And of course, let's go into the history of Portugal very quickly. Some accord between them and Spain in the
the Pope in the 16th century said, divided the world on the latitude.
And said, right, Portugal's got all this and Spain's got all that. And it was literally the world in half.
That was one of those classic things where it's like all the other countries in Europe probably wish they'd been in that meeting. Because it's like, hang on, you've done what?
But this was in the age when, all the other countries in the world, England was this backwater bloody, frozen, frigid bloody place that nobody cared or knew anything about. They had no navy. And then 20 years later that Drake and everybody else started actually doing something and making a scene on the world. But it's interesting for Portugal. I want to go just again back in the history a little bit of 1974. The Carnation Revolution happened, and basically Portugal pulled out of all its colonial territories.
Yes, which leads to the East Timor conflict to our north. But
but the point being is that they've pulled out in 1974 because of activities of a revolution at home, a peaceful revolution back in Portugal. And because of that...
the colonised people of the world will be like, oh, you got to have a peaceful revolution, did you? Isn't that nice? You've been sticking bamboo shoots under our fingernails for 400 years,
500.
but you got to have a peaceful revolution.
The point being is that the Portuguese military had been deployed overseas in its colonies for 500 years. All right, that stage in 1974. All right, they had people. Their military had always been deployed overseas, and so that's a huge chunk of time for your military to be dedicated to the idea of we fight in other people's countries and we subjugate. We control these colonies, and our military is in these colonies, and that's where we fight, and that's what we do. And for 500 years, to think of that, and in 1974, they all come home and they go, "Oh, we've got to think about how we're now part of NATO, and we need to be confined to this tiny little sliver of land that's not even probably the size of Tasmania. We've got some good surf to the north, I think, but besides that, what do we do?" And that their militaries had to adapt, and so they did. They went and bought some M60s at the time. Now they're on to the Leopard 2 A2s. Oh, sorry, Leopard 2 A6s. They've got about 40. Yeah. They got about 40 of those of various types. They're rolling around. So they got 14,000 people in their military. So having 40 Leopards is not a bad number. And they go on NATO deployments. And yes,
also, Portugal was one of the first countries in the world to just end the war on drugs and decriminalise everything. Not fully legalised. Hasten to add, and there are lots of wrinkles in the rules, but basically you don't go to prison for holding smallish quantities of drugs, and it turns out the world doesn't end, and society still functions.
What do you mean, John?
Yeah, it's astonishing. Anyway,
they have no tanks of their own. Oh, sorry, they build no tanks of their own, but they have bought the Leopards.
Like everyone else who's smart buys Leopard 2s. Yeah.
All right. Now, John, the beer.
Mm-hmm.
Tasty.
Like I said, the smelliest in a good way, like big nose lager I think I've ever encountered. Very nice flavours, and it's still in lager territory in that I think you could drink this all night without it overwhelming your palate. I'm a big fan of this. I could easily order a case of this for a party.
Now, look, I could be totally wrong about where San Juan is. There might be a San Juan in Portugal.
There could be a few San Juans.
I apologise if that's the case.
Just means St. John, doesn't it?
No,
anyway, that's fine.
Yes, no, not Francisco. San Diego, that's St. John, isn't it? Oh, that's St. James.
Sounds like San Diego,
No, St. James is Santiago.
All right, keep moving, Rob. Keep moving.
All right.
I have the tweets if we want to go through those.
Let's go through the tweets.
The tweets is the Totally Tanked Twitter feed, which is just where are we at? Totally Tanked 1. Oh, sorry, at Totally Tanked 1, or one word.
Do we have the Twitters?
We are on Twitter. Yeah, we've got bugger all followers, but that's fine. But we do
we have a Twitter?
Yeah, we do. But we've also got Sean, who is a solid dude who goes to a lot of Canadian military museums. So CFB Borden, which is Canadian Forces Base Borden, their military museum, and he tagged us in.
Yes, I have seen the chief do a few things there. Yep.
Yeah. So and a really good picture of a Matilda that he sent us. That was nice. But then my absolutely favourite tweet from Sean, or favourite tweet ever, but it happened to be from Sean. Some World War II hardware at Ontario Museum today. That's a Hetzer. So there's a video, and then he tagged at World of Tanks.
Big names.
At Totally Tanked 1.
Woohoo! That's
so
us.
We got mentioned in the same sentence as World of Tanks. Not even the same paragraph, my friend. Same sentence. From Sean. And Sean,
Thanks, Sean.
I'm not mocking you here. I do appreciate it. Then there was...
We're as aspirational to those lofty heights of World of Tanks, and we really appreciate you putting us up there, because it's not something we do ourselves, but I'm glad somebody else is doing it for us.
Absolutely. Now, when we tweeted on December 3 about the Sabaton connection with Totally Tanked, Sean replied saying, "I had no idea what Sabaton was until my son discovered it. It's jarring when he plays it at the breakfast table, but he was at least telling us about history." And I replied to that saying, well, at least you're both learning something. So.
Look, I got to say, I get a lot of my science these days from webcomics, and XKCD, you've gone a long way for
yeah, but
educating
Randall
people.
Munro knows more about science than anyone's forgotten.
I know, but at least I'm actually reading about it, because you can imagine reading a lot of science books these
No,
days.
you need the nice guy who used to work at NASA to tell you what the cool stuff is.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, we've got a question from Sean to round out the tweets.
Oh, this one was a stumper.
Here you go, Rob. Here's your big moment. Everyone hates certain fictional portrayals of tanks, but what's your favourite tank appearance in film?
Now, this was a stumper. I mean, John came straight out with, you go.
So, for me, it's the appearance of the Russian T-72s in Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn. Wolverines.
Avenge me, boys! Avenge me! For those who don't know.
The original one set in Colorado in the 1980s, the Ronald Reagan wet dream, where through reasons that make no sense whatsoever, nuclear war starts and the Reds have invaded Colorado, and the local football team heads to the hills to wage guerrilla war against the invading commies.
I'm sure you've all our listeners. I'm sure most of you have seen it.
Most of our listeners are probably big fans of the movie.
I was a huge fan of the movie. I loved it.
And
I was running around the backwoods of Virginia in camo pants because of that. Oh, I was having great fun.
Yeah.
I was 12, so I'm allowed to.
Absolutely. It's a transitional thing, and then you get a bit older and you're like, oh, there's some things that are problematic here. But
and then I ran around the woods and got paid for it. Yeah. Nowadays, I don't have to run around in the woods at all.
But I would say that the depiction of, and I've looked this up, so in Red Dawn, they're not T-72s, they're actually the chassis of M48s, so the patterns, and they have built fiberglass T-72 turrets to make them look like T-72s. So at least it's not just, because a lot of movies, they just put totally the wrong tank and paint an iron cross on it and be done. So they went to some effort to make the T-72s look real, and for mine, and why I like this as a representation of a tank, the inexorability of the tank, that unless you have a very dedicated tank-killing weapon, there's nothing you can do about it.
A picnic basket full of explosives going inside, that's a great way of taking it out.
That is a way of taking it out. But it also really conveyed the inexorability and industrialization that tanks represent. And so that for mine... And particularly, it short-circuited a lot of things in my 17-year-old brain when I watched Red Dawn. So, it would have been, 13 probably. Yeah. But, anyway, that's mine. So, Rob, tell us yours.
Oh, look, it was a stumper for me because I was going through, I was saying, oh, that's a really good point. I like this. But I never really looked at all these tanks from the idea of what tanks are they when I watch these movies. I was just watching movies. What tanks are they? Are they the real tanks that are being depicted within the movie, like whether it was Kelly's Heroes and the Shermans and that? Whether it was what I can't even remember the tanks that were actually used in the Beast of War with. I'm assuming they were T-55s. But I don't actually remember what tank was actually used as part of the depiction within the movie, which is the only thing I remember about is the feeling of, yep, this was a cool movie about the Russian invasion of Afghanistan and this tank crew getting isolated and wandering around. And Michael from The Lost Boys, I can't even remember the actor's name, but he was Michael in The Lost Boys. And
he looked exactly like Michael Hutchence from In Excess.
Yes,
so, yeah.
an Australian band that some people may or may not know.
They were big in America in Excess.
They were, but...
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly. It was the 80s. But...
And was Kylie Minogue there the night he died? Anyway, let's move on from that.
She wasn't, but I do know Sir Rebecca Gibney, on the other hand.
Keep moving.
But lately, more recently, to watch movies about tanks from World War II, I've been getting into the Russian propaganda movies, whether it was Iron Fury the other week, or the KV-1 movie that came out at the beginning of the year, hit Netflix at the beginning of the year, or even the mysterious White Tiger that had come out many years ago, but has finally made its way into the Western scene. And again, I've got no real attachment to any of them, but they're all fun because I let my suspension of disbelief occur and enjoy the movies with tanks because they're tanks. And I don't really get hung up on, oh, that's actually a M48 that's been done up as a T55, and so can't actually be and it's all wrong in the road wheels. No, it's a tank. And I enjoyed a lot of those things. The Bridge Too Far, that was a fun one with when not the Hetzer, the Stug 3 in the village takes out the British tank column because, in fact, that's probably, I'm going to go with that one. The Stug 3 taking out the British tank column moving through the Dutch township. Because
wow,
the
controversial, Rob. Putting a Stug, a thing that doesn't even have a turret, as your favourite depiction of a tank.
I'm seeing it as the favourite depiction of a tank being used well, saying it's from camouflage, and then people getting confused as to, oh, is that a tank? No, that's not a tank. And then suddenly it comes out and goes, black, 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 take this, Churchill.
This is up there with you buying a Dutch beer to review a Czech tank. But
I'm not afraid of the controversy, John.
You're just the Ghost Division. Okay. Moving on from that, we now get to the Facebook comments through the year.
And look, and I could be totally wrong about there being a Stug 3. I just remember it was a turretless tank that came out of ambush position and shot
a Stug.
It probably was, but the thing is, I didn't actually take notice of. All I knew was it was a turretless tank, and
there was I can't remember his name at the moment. There was a British major who, in part of that debacle, destroyed an enormous number of tanks. He started using a Piat, and then he ran out of Piat ammunition. That's the weird British spigot mortar that they use as an anti-tank weapon. But then, having run out of ammunition for that thing, he just started using a mortar, but firing it from the hip. And
not his hip.
No, he was firing it from his hip.
No, he wasn't be bracing it on his hip.
No, he wasn't bracing on his hip. He was sort of holding it around his hip height and nudging it till it fired the mortar and destroying tanks. And he was like the last man across the river, and then refused to report in until he could borrow a shaving kit because he couldn't report in without being clean shaven. Quite a dude. I think he won a Victoria Cross, but sorry, no one wins a Victoria Cross. One is only awarded a Victoria Cross. From Facebook comments, Scott Atkins got in touch to say he'd been enjoying the podcast so far. Couple of comments. He was amazed that we didn't mention the alleged habit of the T-72's autoloader to grab the gunner's arm and stuff it in the breech.
Did we? I thought we said that was that never actually happened.
Well, I will say I certainly read Effect's done a whole video on it, and I tend to believe him that it seems unlikely that there are guards in place if you actually look at a T-72.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching that video and thinking, that doesn't actually happen.
So, but I can certainly see that would be one of the things that the Loaders Union would talk about, saying, you can't have auto loaders, it steals people's body parts. But anyway, thank you very much, Scott. Scott says, I wasn't a tanker in the army, but I've been a fan for a long time. And we had a couple of other comments from Scott's about you guys have the only surviving A7v. We had it on loan to us, and it's gone back to Brisbane. That's the German First World War tank.
Yep.
And yes, Bovington's is just a replica. The Australian one is real. So, yeah. Okay. Bjorn has been a regular contributor. There's a couple of things. Anyway, he's from Sweden, and he particularly got in touch.
Really, with a name like that?
Yeah, after the S tank.
Not that we're making fun of our Swedish comrades. We love you all.
Yes. He says, there's a lot of mention of Robotech in your pod. If you ever want to make an April Fool's pod discussing the ins and outs of the Veritech hover tank, I'll gladly provide you with a script. My RPG technical write-up for it was impressive enough to make some Nigerian want to buy 20 of them. Well done, Bjorn.
That is cool.
And regular correspondence, Jamie told us, okay, loving the mix of tanks plus the absolutely Australian thing of all beers drunk a few degrees above zero.
Well, my beer is getting very warm because it's a very hot day.
Yes. Okay, is that your hint that we need to move on? Anyway,
No.
Just want to say, Jamie sent us quite a few messages. I'm not going to read them all out, Jamie, but
thanks, Jamie, for getting in contact. We appreciate all the feedback.
Yes. And I think that means we've now covered... Oh, no, we still need to do the YouTube. So let's take a little break, and we'll come back and explore the exciting world of YouTube comments.
And the Huntsman.
And the Huntsman. The Huntsman and the YouTube commenter. Okay, Rob, so very exciting news for Australia this week.
Yes,
we're buying more things that look like tanks.
We opened up the borders in order so that international people could fly in. So the South Korean Prime Minister?
Yes.
President flew in on Monday morning.
Yeah, President and First Lady, yes.
Flew in on Monday morning into Canberra and ran up to...
on a very big plane.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, it was parked at the airport. It was very impressive.
Yeah, but flew in on Monday morning into Australia and ran up to Parliament House to sign a deal with Scotty from marketing.
That's our dear leader for the American or the international audience.
Well, I mean, it's not like...
or in the words of Joe Biden, my little mate there.
my mate from down under.
I don't remember his name, but...
He'll be gone in 6 months, hopefully.
Yeah. Anyway, so our dear leader...
Scotty from marketing and the president of South Korea signed a deal to buy the new self-propelled artillery, self-propelled guns artillery, 155 K9. Thunders, the Koreans call it, but we here in Australia are going to make them Huntsmans. Now, for those who don't know, the Huntsman is a spider in Australia. Any house in Australia during springtime will probably have about 20 huntsmans hiding behind various pictures and walls and under doors and wherever else.
The important context is a full-size huntsman is the size of your hand. So, dear listener, spread your hand as wide as your fingers go, and that's the size of this spider that populates our houses.
That's the biggest size.
That's a big one.
That's a big one, all right? That is a big one. But like the palm of your hand is a decent sized one. And if you just take your finger, your forefinger and your thumb, and you make that size, that's the size of a regular one that you will see all around the place. They come out after dark, so as long as the lights aren't on, you won't. As long as the lights are on, you won't see them. But if you get up in the middle of the night and flick the light on in a room that you're not supposed to be in,
you might see things that'll upset you.
Yeah, and some of them are sleepy and move slowly. You can easily pick them up and throw them outside, and some of them move fast. And
can I tell you...
the jumpy ones, you don't want... The fast, jumpy ones, those are the ones you want to get rid of.
Look, I've got a story that I think our listeners will appreciate.
It's about Matt.
No, it's not about Matt. Cast your mind back to 1998. And a young American girl had come around to dinner at my place, and I was pretty impressed with myself having my own apartment at this moment in time. And I'd had these pair of huntsman spiders that I knew were in the apartment, and they knew that if I saw them, I'd catch them with a pint glass and a bit of paper, and throw them out the door. So I'd trained them to the point where as long as the lights were on, they didn't make an appearance. And this worked quite well because they, ate every other insect in the that would have been in the building. Because we can have cockroaches in this town, but if you got huntsmen around, no cockroach problem.
No.
Anyway, and so dinner had gone quite well, and we got to the candlelit phase of the evening, and the huntsman mistook the candlelight for the lights being out, and emerged these two spiders, and these were big ones, the size of your hand ones. And this poor young woman, her head flipped back, and she just started screaming the most blood-curdling screams imaginable. So I was trying to catch these spiders, and I was quite upset about all the screaming, and the spiders were very upset about the screaming. And I sort of chopped a couple of their legs off trying to catch it, and everyone was very traumatized. And
so for American listeners, yes, they do bite, but they're not deadly.
It's a painful bite.
Yeah, it's a painful bite.
It's no more than a painful
basically,
bite.
They're house guests in Australia, and if you find them, if they're around when the lights are on, you say, well, buddy, it's time for you to go. And so that's where, as you say, you catch them in a piece of Tupperware or a pint glass or whatever else, slip something
Slide a bit of paper under to hold it.
And you take it outside and you throw them out, and you say, right, it's just got to go. And they might come back later, but as long as you don't know about it,
I think
fine.
There's a couple of points there. One is that you could just smash them with your shoe, but they're big enough it would make a mess. And also, they are quite useful in terms of keeping the insects down.
Now, I do want to share the story about Matt Power and the Huntsman.
Go on then. Yes, one for you, Matthew. Yep.
And how he told the story about riding his motorbike at very high speed one night, and then inside his helmet.
Matt never rode a motorcycle at less than 120 kilometres an hour. So,
and then I'm going to put my hand on the top of my head as he felt something crawling down his forehead.
And then the legs came in front of his eyes.
Inside the helmet, because he put his helmet on, and they do like to climb inside helmets. There's a nice dark spot, and I have seen them climb inside bike helmets before. But he was going at a fast speed, and very calmly pull his bike over, stop, take the helmet off very gently, and then scream and run around like a man.
I think he threw the helmet a long way away from him, but yeah. Yes.
It was a great story. And I thought, yep, that's a husband. It's okay. It wasn't going to bite him, but it was a great big thing. Anyway,
when they emerge from the air conditioning vents of your car, it can cause accidents.
I've had the situation where one was walking up my windscreen as I'm driving along, and I realised I've got the driver's side window open, and it's coming straight in that direction. I'm thinking, if that comes in the driver's side window and lands on me, I'm not going to be happy. And so it's a mad race of trying to wind up the window with the old handle versus the huntsman getting in there. It was a case of, yep, this is one of the more fun things in Australia. All right? Anyway, the K9. We bought some.
Bought a bunch of them.
Bought 40.
Yeah, and also, I mean, one of the coolest things about the K9 Thunder is it comes with a re-ammunitioning vehicle.
Yep.
Which automatically, so you don't need to have soldiers lining up in a goat rope handing rounds between each other. It mates with the artillery piece and swaps out the spent shells for the new ones.
Like a vehicle centipede.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was trying to put that image in there.
Thanks, that's helpful. Anyway, so it's a very advanced re-ammunitioning system that doesn't involve exposing anyone to the environment. Then obviously those vehicles can scurry backwards and forwards from the bigger ammunition dumps away from enemy fire. So it's very advanced. It's a tracked vehicle. It's a 155mm gun. It only does, I think, 3 rounds for simultaneous landing. Which is because the American systems will do up to 6 where they fire on different trajectories, so they all reach the target.
From the one gun?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this one will only do 3. I think 3's enough.
Yeah.
Because there is the whole thing that with artillery, it's most effective in the first 20 seconds.
Before everybody's in cover.
Yeah, before everyone takes cover. After that becomes less effective. So the more rounds you can get in the target area before the enemy knows that you're firing at them, the more effective your fire will be. Up until now, Australian artillery has been towed vehicles, and frankly, any peer enemy with counter-battery radar would obliterate them very quickly.
Very quickly, yep.
Yeah. Whereas a self-propelled gun can fire its 3 rounds and start running away.
Shoot and scoot.
Yeah. Before the enemy even knows that they're there.
Whereas our 155s that have been towed behind the whatever truck we're using these days and has to be moved along, saying, yep, these 6 guys need to fire the rounds, then hook up the trailer, the tow bar, and then scoot on out of there before the counter-battery fire comes in. So
yeah, and at that point, against a competent enemy, you're not going to get that far.
No, we're not. So it's a big advancement for Australian artillery. I'm sure. They've been very competent. There's lots of cases of the Australian artillery having great success during many battles over many wars, but they have been lacking in protection and mobility for quite a while. They've had a lot of advances in detection and air warfare and so forth, but it's one of those things that the actual ground-based god of war that is artillery has been a bit lacking in Australia for quite a while. So this is a big advancement, and let's face it, it's more money that Scotty from marketing is just throwing around the place in order to be a bit of a war hawk, to my mind.
Look, about 20 years ago, word started circulating that the US was expecting Australia to contribute a mechanised division in the event of a war with China. And that seemed odd because we didn't have a mechanised division.
We've got 2 divisions in Australia,
yeah,
and neither of them is mechanised.
Yeah, but it is interesting that in the interim, we have acquired 100-odd tanks, and
we had 100-odd tanks back then as well.
There was a period where we'd retired the Leopard ones, and
no, we went straight from Leopard 1s onto the Abrams.
Okay. Anyway, We certainly couldn't send the Leopard 1s overseas.
The koalas, like the...
Like the Centurions, yeah. Anyway, and we do sort of have sort of built up... They could sort of cobble together something close to a mechanised division at this point, but it would be... Let's hope it doesn't come to that.
A lot of M113s running around rather than...
and just waiting to cook up, yeah. Okay, let's talk about the comments we've had on YouTube. Now, YouTube, I've only just started middle of this year actually getting our episodes onto it for complicated reasons about YouTube. But
there was a button. You had to tick it. And he ticked it, and then we're on.
And then they started. And then we had people complaining that they'd missed the other episodes. And we're like, well, you can go listen to the podcast. And they're like, no, I want to listen to it on YouTube. So fine, I re-rendered them all and re-uploaded them all.
He does all the tech, and he's marvellous for that.
Yeah, anyway.
I just come along and talk about things and look good on radio.
Yeah, there is... Because it's a little weird. We're not the only people on Earth who put out a podcast just into YouTube, and there's nothing that moves, nothing to look at, but you can just put it on and listen. And that's okay. But it does mean in terms of YouTube metrics... that while our listen numbers are quite small, our watch hours, which YouTube cares about a lot, are enormous. Because once someone starts listening to an hour and a half of us...
I wonder if these are the people who paid for YouTube Premium, and that's why they want to listen to their podcasts and that.
Yeah, we're available on all of other free services, but that could be it.
They've paid for it, therefore they want.
Anyway,
how they're going to use it.
There's a fella called Positroll, who would appear to be German and knows... more about tanks than he should possibly be saying in comments, because there has been a few cases this year when tank nerds, to settle arguments, have got themselves arrested, particularly to the War Thunder forums, publishing actual classified schematics. So I will show you, this is where the armour is on the Leopard A5.
So that is a breach of national security, and
you are going to prison. Yeah. So anyway, Positrol wanted to let us know that Germany is currently working on a battlefield communication system linked to their IDZ system, and it's called Panzer Grenadier. It's been tested on 40 Pumas and will now be put on another 150 Pumas. That was good to know. We'll get to the Puma one day. It's an interesting vehicle.
On a Warthog. That's a red versus blue joke. Yeah. Yes.
Also wanted to let us know that Germany is working on the Leopard 2A8 to be introduced around 2028. Yep, that's good.
Thank you for those insights, because basically we don't have a lot of information about the inner workings of various developments in those sort of places, but happy to keep up with them.
More from Positrol. Challenger 3 isn't that stupid, because we had said it was stupid, because it was, on its face of it, too small a run of tanks for a bespoke capability. Stand by that for that context, but some more context here from Positrol. The UK has become an observer to the MGCS, so that's the forthcoming Euro tank with the Germans and the French, combining the Leclerc with the Leopard.
And the 130mm gun.
Yeah. If you want to be taken serious in that project, you need to preserve some local capability. The Challenger 3 does that. If you produce tanks for the GER France and UK, you can actually go for 2 different tanks, a medium and a heavy one with common components. And he's saying a company called KMW, which I don't know, and next to the French one, then do the lighter one, and RM, which is Rheinmetall, and BAE do the heavy. So that's some very interesting context that I found very useful. And also from Positrol, and I'm not sure what video he's responding to, saying the transmission isn't that surprising when you think about it in the right context. The Germany builds most machines for building machines. Oh, this is the K2, the Korean tank.
Yep.
The Koreans build a lot of stuff just like the Chinese, much of it on machines made in Germany. He's right about that. The German robots do actually do most of the world's manufacturing. The Germans sold the machines to build heavy-duty civilian engines. They didn't sell them specialised machines to build transmissions that are up to move 60-ton tanks at 60 kilometres an hour. Very good point. Thank you, Positrol. We do appreciate it.
Which is why possibly the Altay, the Turkish version of the K2,
yes,
may come about because of releases, the advances they're making in their transmission, because the Germans won't export information to the Turks because of reasons. I can't remember what we discussed in the K2. But anyway, the Yalte may still come along.
Mm-hmm. Now, Tasman006 is our next regular contributor on YouTube, who wants to let us know that the Chieftain and Challenger both had the 120mm L11 gun. That's the rifled British gun, which did the record long-range tank kill. Yeah, asterisks. Yes, and then he said the Challenger 2 had the 120mm L30. Now, where we use L, that means calibers, which is bore diameters times what the L number is. Anyway,
How many times it spins or something like that?
Anyway, he then said, it's upgraded, get it right. Thank you, Tasman, for letting us know.
As I said before, we are not that strict on that sort of stuff.
Now, he also wanted to let us know they later fixed the Chieftain's engine problem. It is a great tank, and the Armani Challenger 2 export version has a 1500 horsepower engine fitted. Now, lots of people have been getting in touch with us this year to say that the Chieftain was actually a really good tank. I still say that any tank with a problematic engine is not a good tank. And I will also note that the Royal Institute of Mechanical Engineers in Britain went into Bovington Tank Museum to list the worst tank in history and named Chieftain. So I'm open to the arguments that it wasn't as bad as is sometimes said by people like me. I would say that all of the tanks that were the last generation of steel armour tanks were death traps because anti-tank missiles that could defeat pretty much any thickness of homogeneous steel armour were coming in, and that when you've got that combined with an engine that is inherently problematic, it isn't a good tank. But as we said when we did the Challenger stuff, Chieftain was the best tank in the world if it broke down where you wanted to fight. Stand by that. Tasman also wanted to let us know that the idea of making smoke with the engine came from the Soviets, and the T-54 4s and 5s could do that. In our talk on the S-Tank, Tasman wanted to know, great talk, lads, on a great tank. From another Aussie in lockdown with beer, keep up the good work. Thank you, Tasman. The Hetzer, he said, Budvar, here we come. And then there was he's obviously been going back through the collection on YouTube. Mephisto, the German A7v Tank, used to be at Brisbane in a cage with a roof. I saw it there a few times back in the 70s and 80s. It got flooded and restored. It's at the Queensland Museum. Then he let us know, also, you guys forgot the British light tank, the Whippet, could cruise along at the blistering speed of 11 kilometres an hour. The Germans call the British tanks the Devil's Coaches. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Wi-Fi Soldier wanted us to know when we posted on the IS2. Cool, a video for my favourite tank. Thank you. That's the sort of feedback we like. And then just in the last few days, someone called Outlandia wanted to let us know about the Hetzer, that the Hetzer was designed as a wheel chock for the Rat. Could have been.
I don't know how to take that.
Yeah.
That is a statement that I do not understand. Like Chugi.
And then
or yeeting.
Yeah, we're both Chugi, mate. And then the Stug 3, Outlandia came back a day later to let us know they used it to Stug it to the Soviets. So,
nice.
Boom tish, Outlandia. So I think that has covered all of our correspondence for the year.
What about the one from the Arjun?
Oh, man, no, we haven't done the Facebook comments. Yeah, you're right.
We did get one saying, thank you very much about the comments on the Arjun, the best description of the Arjun that is seen, and want to know where to give us money. I mean, we thought,
that wasn't the response we were expecting from the Indian War Nerds. No. How do we give you money? But it was good.
I haven't seen any other responses to that.
That was from Vic Ray. So
Vic
thank
Ray,
you, Vic Ray.
Yeah, but I don't know if there were any further responses to the Arjun from that.
No, we haven't, and it was a little weird because we have had lots of listeners in India, and it's really I'm really enjoying when they come up on my little graph of where we've been listened to. Going and looking up the various Indian provinces that have come in that I, to my shame, had no idea where they were.
No, it's a massive country. We just don't... I mean, in Australia, we're a massive country. We're divided in basically 5 places. Western Australia, Northern Australia, Southern Australia, and the East Coast, which is divided up into hot medium, and cold.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you need to know about Australia. Anyway, so we do have lots of Indian listeners, and I really do enjoy seeing the place names come up and looking them up and finding out about them. So that's one of the little joys of running this podcast. And when we've done other countries' tanks, like particularly the Swedes when we did the S-Tank, tons of Swedes jumped on to see what we had to say about that. And the Arjun it's done really well for its first week of release. It's our biggest listened to podcast in its first week. I'm hoping it'll keep getting listens, so that was good. But I think we had like 3 listens in the whole of India. So they just didn't want to hear what we had to say about their tank, which that's fine.
That's understandable.
Yeah, except the one person who got in touch saying, "How do I send you money? Your podcast is so awesome and you're so handsome." So that's good. And we like I said, we said earlier, we're thinking about how you can send us money. We just want to do it in a way that works for everyone, including those who don't want to pay. So that's why we haven't quite got...
We're doing this because we like hanging out and drinking beer and talking about tanks. And you people are a happy afterthought.
Anyway, moving on. So that's what's going on with that. That's been really cool. Yeah. All right, we've been talking over an hour, Rob. Is there any other things you want to talk to people about?
Everybody stay safe, drive safe. If you're moving around for Christmas times, and look forward to catching up with a new tank in January.
Yes, there will be another. We'll actually talk about a tank. Although we did talk about, self-propelled artillery.
We talked about stuff.
It's tank adjacent, but also self-propelled artillery. I mean, we're going to have to do Archer at some point, and that's a nice SPG. So,
but it won't be next. It won't be in January.
No,
we have another
that's
tank
not the one. Different one. Yeah,
we'll find out soon.
If you want to play the What Tank Are They Doing Next game, you need to sign up to either the Twitter or the Facebook.
There you go.
Because we do little silhouettes of them. And
John does silhouettes, and I don't know how he does it. It's magic to my mind.
Yes.
Wizard did it.
I am a communications professional.
He's a wizard and makes things happen. So
yeah. Anyway, and it's always really annoying because I put it up and 5 seconds later one of our nerdier, more intense listeners will nail it in the first guess. And then it's like, well, you've ruined the game for everyone.
Disable comments for about half a day. There you go.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah, that'd cut out the people who know stuff, and then I could just watch them all flail around. Yeah. Anyway, so listen, folks. We do hope you have a really good Christmas. And if you're feeling lonely, I can't promise we'll get back to you, but certainly get in touch with us. We'll say hi. Yep. Other than that, stay strong, stay good, and we will have a new tank in mid-January for you.
And hopefully 2022 will be a better year for everybody. Hopefully.
Well, unless the Russians kick off a war with Ukraine.
No. Hopefully.
Yeah, or the Taiwan thing.
Hopefully.
Yeah. We'll have a lot to talk about tanks if either of those things happen, so...
True. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but anyway, we will.
Yes. I would note the Ukrainians just bought an enormous order of tank-killing drones. Before we go. The Ukrainians have been having huge protests in Kiev again, and it's because the manufacturer of the rubber tanks... So the Ukrainians had asked a Ukrainian company to build them some rubber inflatable tanks. To lay down at the border, which is a good idea.
Which is what the British did in 44 or whatever it was.
Yeah, before D-Day, there were a whole bunch of inflatable tanks, and they had George Patton himself basically sitting in the middle of these tanks with a radio set, pretending he was the headquarters of an army. As a major misdirection, the Germans were like, aha, Patton's headquarters is here, and he's surrounded by these tanks.
Patton was so happy about that. He was so happy about that idea.
Yeah. Anyway, my point is
sarcasm, folks. He really wasn't.
Rubber tanks are actually a very useful thing to misdirect enemy intelligence, and even if the tanks don't move, it's like, well, tanks that aren't moving don't move. Doesn't mean you still have to figure out which ones are the real tanks and which ones are the fake tanks. But the Ukrainians, then the Ukrainian army accidentally mentioned to the media that they'd ordered all these fake tanks. And then the Ukrainian government said, well, if the Russians know they're fake tanks, they're pointless. We don't want them anymore. And the company that ordered the fake tanks from is now not getting paid. even though they've made the fake tanks. And so they're parking the fake tanks all over Kiev as a protest against not getting paid to make the rubber tanks. Which is kind of funny, except there is the fact that the Russians are massing troops on the Ukrainian border. We mentioned last episode that the German Nord Stream 2 pipeline seems to be the impetus, and this week the Germans have stopped work on Nord Stream 2, because when that pipeline's complete and working, then the Russians don't need to worry about cutting off the pipeline that goes through Ukraine. So it's really counterintuitive and weird, but it does seem to be what's doing it. The Germans have cancelled work, stopped work on
If they can cancel work during winter, which is when everybody needs
the gas matters,
the gas matters, then there can be a lot more diplomacy come springtime.
That seems to be the hope.
Yeah.
But it's I would. Something that I only realised, like in the last month, looking at it, because it was a bit weird. Ukraine, at the end of the Soviet Union, had nuclear weapons.
Yeah, they gave them up under the assurance that the West would look after them.
Yeah, with guarantees from both the Russians and the West that their borders would be respected if they surrendered their nuclear weapons, which they did. And
until 2014, when the Russians took Crimea.
But from the Russian point of view, part of that deal was that NATO wouldn't be expanded into former Warsaw Pact countries.
Like Poland.
Yeah. So from the Russian point of view, that deal was null and void when NATO started expanding. And that certainly does make it an uglier picture for the Western allies who, guaranteed Ukraine security in exchange for their nukes.
Does East Germany included in that?
No, that didn't, because it became Germany. But... yeah, so
Poland could become Germany as well, and that would be that would cause complications.
I don't think the Poles want to do that. Germans have got some ideas on that, Rob. But anyway, I just wanted to note that it's a bit of context that doesn't get talked about much in all this brouhaha. Is that the Western deals with the Soviets when the Ukrainians surrendered their nuclear weapons were broken by the Western powers, and
so what you're saying is it's like the Cuban Missile Crisis all over again.
Oh, there's so much coming out about what actually happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis that
there is.
Most of what we've been told through our lives isn't actually what happened. But yeah, which is what most of history actually is. A whole bunch of things that weren't what we got told as kids. Anyway, on that note, we've really dragged on now.
You did it.
Thank you to everyone who's listened to us all the way through. And we'll be back in the new year. And until then, just avoid stress. Do things that work for you.
Be excellent to each other.
Yeah, that's it. See you later, folks.